Brothers and sisters, may the Lord bless you to the core of your being. Welcome to Let the Children Come to Me. This is the first video on this channel, and we will talk about definition of trafficking of children. Trafficking of children, also known as child trafficking, is a form of human trafficking, which are essentially the same, they have the same definition, just that in child trafficking there is minors involved. So today we're going to look at some of the terms and how child trafficking is initiated in children. And we're going to take tiny steps so that we can learn about this without overwhelming ourselves. This is a very overwhelming topic, and there's no sense in making the loads bigger than they need to be, and it must be done. So let's get into it. Trafficking of children, also known as child trafficking, is a form of human trafficking and is defined by the United Nations as the recruitment, transportation, harboring, and receipt of a child for the purpose of slavery, forced labor, and exploitation. Sometimes children may also be trafficked for illegal adoption, and it's estimated that over 3 million children worldwide are being victimized in sex trafficking and child labor. That is according to the anti-trafficking organization Love 146. I would make a shot in the dark and say that it's way more than 3 million children worldwide. I would think this number goes into the hundreds of millions, if not billions. I think there is a huge, this is just an estimate, of course, but I think there's just so much going on that happens in places where no one can see. So the first thing I would like to do today is look at the recruitment. I know the word recruitment from the army. Apparently there is a traditional way of that. Of course, obviously in the 80s, 90s, before that, early 2000s, there was no internet. So that time of recruitment is referred to as the traditional way. Children may be abducted using threat, force, and aggression. The topic of the threat, the force, and the aggression is one that will be discussed heavily on this channel. Today, we may focus on coercion, but we will see how far we get with the term of recruitment. Over 50%, around 57% estimated, of recruitment nowadays happens online. We will look into how this is done as well. However, in recruitment, poverty is still the major contributor to the perpetration of child trafficking. In Captive Daughters, a non-profit site seeking an end to sex trafficking, poverty is considered the core cause of sex trafficking. So, yeah, I think that's also why this estimated number can be at least doubled, because there's so much poverty in this world, and wherever there's children born, where there's poverty to drastic extents, children can just disappear. Everyone can just disappear. And then we must understand that there's children born in this created environment in which people are being trafficked. So I think, yeah, these factors are, it's hard to estimate how many victims there are. Below are ways which traffickers by which traffickers recruit or lure their victims. Debt bondage, that's something that I can attest to with my own eyes. I have attested to with my own eyes. It happens under your face. People talk about it openly. It's normal here where I am right now in the world. Where I am, there's many people from Nigeria, Gambia, Uganda, many people from the state of Africa. And they literally came here on boats. If you have conversations with them, you can see the trauma in their eyes. And they need housing. They have no paperwork. Luckily, where I live, it's a very mild form of that. But they have no paperwork and they need work and money, of course, obviously. So they rent, and for the rent they work. And until the debt is worked off, of course, the wages are small, much smaller than the government requires them to be. And until the debt is paid, the people are bound to that place. And sometimes that's for many, many years, even after paperwork has been established, because they have no financial means. I was personally tried to be trafficked recently in the real world, so where everyone can see and touch it. It was a landlord that knew that we were, that I was, isolated. And the landlord tried to communicate from the very first initial interaction that I didn't have enough money to pay the rent and that I needed to work for him. I kept him at an arm's length at all times, which wasn't easy because he breached my personal space whenever he could. Luckily, we play for the right team, so he was kept away from us and everything went well. But till the very end, he tried to put me in debt by attaching the neighbor's electricity to my electricity box and claiming that we used too much electricity and that I had to pay that money off. In the end, when we had moved out contactless, he wrote me a message, he deleted the message. So that was the end of that. I've never heard from him ever since. So this is a very common form of human trafficking. It's not so secret, it's not so crazy, it happens. So debt bondage, or rendering service as payment for a family's debt. Yeah, and again, I know a family that live in conditions like this. The woman is pregnant right now. Other child is in a school age. Emotional blackmail, a threat of exposing a child's embarrassing secret to the public. So all of this falls under coercion and also under a term that is called, in these realms, there is a whole list of vocabulary that we're going to go through over time. Seasoning, a combination of psychological manipulation, ... We will get into this a little later. False friendships, false marriage proposals, false elopement. So all of these things fall under coercion and seasoning as well. Fraudulent adoption. I've heard the case of allegedly the father of Liv Tyler, the Aerosmith singer, right? He did that. Someone in the 70s, I think, or 80s, he adopted a minor. Allegedly, there's a documentary on women speaking up. Mm, introduction of narcotics and encouragement of addiction to illegal substances. Children left to themselves, for whatever reasons, are very children are very impressionable in the first place. But if they have no guidance from at home, they will look for this guidance elsewhere. And it's very, very, very easy to introduce them to things like this. I think when we read this as human beings, we are like, ah, come on, introduction of narcotics, that sounds outrageous. How would that work? Encouragement of addiction. But it's these coercion techniques, and this seasoning is very powerful, because the false friendships, and it goes further than friendship, but it starts out as friendship, are very powerful. The child has no one to turn to, and it's literally like the computer, the voice that comes out of the computer becomes the child's friend. Peer pressure from friends, promise of scholarship or opportunity to study. I will go into the peer pressure from friends. I will have to look into this. I don't understand that point. Promise of scholarship, opportunity, promises, legitimate employment, conventional business, also promises of career, acting, modeling, promise of travel, and outright purchase of a child from the child's parent or guardian. I think that was the case with the Aerosmith singers' adoption of a minor, that the mother was like, yeah, you know what, I can't deal with her anyways, take her. I think she was 16. Coercion involves compelling a party to act in an involuntary manner through the use of threats, including the threats to use force against that party. Not only that party, but often also family is involved. I'm going to kill your brother, I'm going to whatever it is. So we now live in times where this happens online a lot. Of course, in order to recruit someone, you need to have contact to the child, and this gets inherently more difficult in this world where there's cameras everywhere, where everyone is on guard. Every parent I know is like keeping an eye out. And because this is happening currently everywhere. There's no place where it doesn't happen, and it happens in broad daylight, and it's literally like stranger men lifting up stranger children in the busy street in the middle of a city, and trying to walk away with the child in broad daylight. So yeah, this is everywhere, so everyone is on guard. But the big dangers, I think, today definitely are lying in online recruitment. So this is the website humantraffickingfront.org. We were before talking about the traditional ways of recruitment on stayawayfoundation.org. The Shared Hope website is one, if you live in North America, might be interesting to you if you want to get active in preventing child trafficking and maybe even possibly saving children. And this is our definitions today we take from Wikipedia. So the Human Trafficking Front has the stages of trafficking recruitment through the internet. The first is the identification. The first step, predators or traffickers identify potential victims through various means, such as social media platforms, chat rooms, online forums, or gaming communities. So I think this is extremely, this is where it all begins, and that's why it's so important to shield and protect our children from the internet. But of course, this goes towards the parents, all parents of this age, but definitely also to the platforms. I don't want to name names, but I think it's really heinous, the contents that are disguised as adult content, but are clearly targeted at children. And I think these places are places where people really fish for victims, because yeah, kids are impressionable. They see something on the internet and they think it's reality. And especially if it has a nice sticker on it, like good person or good Christian or whatever is the sticker, that makes it even more enticing. And I think because of these types of contents that children are targeted with, it's very easy for predators to go after them and say things like, hey, I'm a big producer and I make videos for YouTube and you could be a YouTube star or whatever. So these places, I think, are, of course, chat rooms, online forums, and gaming communities are mentioned here, but I think the social media platforms are a space that is bigger than it only exists in itself, in its physical existence. And I do think this is a responsibility that goes to the platforms, but also to the users, to all of us. That we, especially when we know our children, the children of this earth, watch our contents, that we have such power over their minds. And that if we portray this lifestyle, this fake lifestyle, as reality, that it makes a young, impressionable mind delusional. And it's so easy to fool somebody who's already living in delusion. But yes, chat rooms, online forums, that's definitely something that should be controlled by parents. But the reality of life is we all need to feed our children. And so we need to go to work, and parents go to work from early morning to the evening. And the children are often left on their own. So yeah, but there isn't an immediate fix. We all have to make little steps towards the big goal. Offenders may search for vulnerable individuals. We are now here in the first column, explaining what the identification process looks like, in particular children based on age, location, interests, or other factors. Again, it's not very difficult nowadays. With a tiny bit of knowledge, you can find out these things very easily. There's even videos where people do CIA tests and show how you can figure out information about people through the internet. So you don't need to be a super brain or a programmer, a nerd or whatever, to learn how to gain information about a child's location on the internet. Online grooming. Once a potential victim is identified, the predator initiates contact. Offenders may use fake profiles or adopt false identities to establish a connection. Now, when we go on, we will read that they will make contact to the child, and in that moment, this disguise falls, and they yet manage to keep control over the child. Like, not every case, the child is immediately abducted and taken away. In some cases, that just cannot work this way. In many, many cases, this will happen behind the parents' backs. And the parent will come home from work and the child will sit at the table, do his or her homework. And no one will ever know that this is going on. But the big question in the room is, how does this work? How do they adopt a false profile and then later are able, without any disguise, to control the child? So for purpose, the predator aims to engage the victim in conversation and build a rapport with them. All these things are major important. We will see this throughout talking about this, because this is where all the power of the perpetrators lies. Grooming is a manipulative process. We are now in online grooming. Once a potential victim is identified, the predator. Okay, grooming is a manipulative process in which the predator gradually, that's the key word here, gains the victim's trust. It's a very gradual process that can sometimes take up to years, because the goal here is the long game. And if you can season coerce a child into thinking that they are a victim, then that lasts forever. We will talk about her a little bit later, but a beautiful lady that I recently watched an interview of. We will talk about this interview in later videos. She gave a great example for the word, the term seasoning. When in countries where they make elephant work animals, they need to train them to function so that they can use them and they don't trample them to death. So what they will do, they will take a trained elephant mother, or also a wild elephant mother, and they will tie her baby to a chain so that she doesn't leave the baby and the baby can't go away. Once the baby grows older, they take away the chain links so the elephant baby is free, but the ring on the foot of the elephant stays, so that the elephant thinks, the elephant walks around, but he thinks that he's still captive and cannot run away. And this way they keep them there forever. And so there's a great emphasis on the gradual gain of trust and the establishment of an emotional connection. Those are the two key points, and we can see this in our day-to-day life, even with strangers. Manipulation works if you have an emotional connection with someone. Offenders may shower the victim with attention, something many people do not get, something many people their entire life thirst after, because there's a hole in their hearts and their souls that they cannot fill, and they will crave for attention, and especially children when they are young and they do not get the emotional support that they need from parents, and they have this hole in their souls, they will suck this attention up, no matter where it comes from, compliments, gifts, or sympathy. Grooming can involve building a false sense of friendship, love, or mentorship. The mentorship is also important here. That's something I have seen throughout my career as a student. Many teachers exploit their role. I have seen, I would say throughout my 14 years of school, there has been about 30% of the teachers that exploited their power for sexual gain in that mentorship sense. I used to go to a school where the social status was very important, so there wasn't much of that, and it was very, 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 very settled. It needed to be very quiet, but it was loud enough that looking back, it turns my stomach around. As the grooming process progresses, the predator introduces sexual content into the interactions. And so here we go back to the gradual and why it needs to take very, very long, because not all children are already demoralized by the internet. Many kids still grow up very protected and sheltered. And so sometimes it's necessary to introduce this type of stuff very, very slowly and quietly. And it can be, because this is the long game. They may ask for personal information, share explicit material, or request the victim to send compromising images or videos that then later can be used in blackmail. Where was it? Shower the victim with attention. I think this was in the promise, false friendships, emotional blackmail, or threat of exposing the child's embarrassing secret to the public. This can, of course, then be used for this. As the grooming process progresses, the predator introduces sex. We did that already. They may ask for personal information. The predator exploits the victim's vulnerabilities and may escalate the request or demands over time. 3. Online control and manipulation. The predator exerts control over the victim through various tactics, including emotional manipulation, threats, blackmail, or coercion. So I'm not sure. I earlier used the term coerce, and I think that's a different word, right? Coercion, disambiguation, involves compelling a party to act in an involuntary manner through the use of threats, including threats to use force against that party. It involves a set of forceful actions which violate the free will of an individual in order to induce a desired response. These actions may include extortion, blackmail, or even torture and sexual assault. Common law systems codify the act of violating a law while under coercion as a duress crime. Duress crime. So yeah, a disclaimer here. Oh no, this is gone. Now a disclaimer here on this in this part. I am not a native English speaker, so please go to the comment section and make me aware of any language mistakes, grammar mistakes that I have, speech that I bring forth, because this is important to me, not to spread false information. So please feel free to correct me in the comments, please. Number 3, online control and manipulation. The predator exerts control over the victim through various tactics, including emotional manipulation, threats, blackmail, or coercion. They may use the explicit material obtained from the child to blackmail further compliance or to keep them silent about the exploitation. That this can last a lifetime, and this is oftentimes how people get away with this, that the child is too afraid to talk about what happened before a court, and then predators will just never be convicted of the crime because no one speaks out against them. The trafficker arranges an in-person meeting with a victim. Victims are forced or lured by fraudulent promises made over the internet to have an in-person meeting, and sometimes even leave their home countries. So yeah, this is, of course, here now we go to the process of recruitment. Recruitment is a face-to-face encounter. Until this is all preparation for the actual recruitment, but it's a very important step, because once you're in the mind of someone, you gain all control. If you want to gain control, like that is a very classic way of form of manipulation. The transportation is optional. Minors can be moved. Like I said in the beginning, it mustn't always be like this, to a different location. And this can happen, and the child can be brought back home because the predators have gone into the mind of the child. The child is convinced now that the evil guys are the good guys. Children can be transported only a short distance away from their home or over long distance, even across borders. Commercial exploitation is step number 6, is physical. The exploitation transitions from online to offline. The victim may be subjected to ongoing sexual labor sexual or labor exploitation, generating illicit profits for traffickers. The profit part is essential in human trafficking. There is always, in all forms of trafficking and exchange, somebody always gets something for the human life that they are trying to take. It is important to note that these stages can occur in different sequences and may vary based on individual circumstances, obviously. But this is an important note because it's the details that we need to look out for. Additionally, not all victims progress through all stages, as some may be exploited solely online without physical meetings. And this part is very interesting to me. It's something that will be discussed on this channel in the future. This is major difficult to maneuver. I think there is parts of human trafficking, child trafficking, that are not very explored, are not very loud, are very quiet and not spoken about because it's very difficult to put the finger on them. But I know that there's people in this world that are being trafficked right now, and they are aware, but they have no proof of it. So this will be something we will talk about down the line. If you would like to do something against human trafficking, we talked about the sharedhope.org. I will put their link in the description of this video. There's many more of these organizations, and over time we will come across many of them. I haven't looked into this one, so if you are someone who likes to do things very thoroughly, and does not want to fall into traps, because sometimes the devil sits in the church, so we must be aware of that as well. This is for people who live in North America, but if you want to be active beyond that and you have good recommendations, share them with everyone in the comments. Do not be afraid to look into this, especially if you're a parent. Do not think that you have to shield yourself from horrible things like this. This could happen to anybody at any point in time, and there's no need to be afraid of it. This needs to be stopped, and it can only be stopped if we shine the light on this darkness. I hope wherever you are in the world that God is with you. May He bless you and keep you and never forsake you. In Jesus' name, Amen.